The galactic dominion stretched across countless systems, its influence reaching the farthest corners of known space. For 10,000 years, it had stood as the ultimate authority over thousands of species, with Emperor Cashin Vox as its supreme ruler. From the central planet of Oryx Prime, the Emperor dictated the fate of trillions of beings across the stars. I, Ambassador Quill of the Volperi, had witnessed the machinations of power for decades within these hallowed halls of the Galactic Senate. My people were neither the most influential nor the most oppressed under the Dominion's rule. We occupied that precarious middle ground, valuable enough to have representation, expendable enough to never truly matter in the grand scheme of things. Today's session promised to be significant. Rumors had circulated for weeks about Emperor Vox's new reforms, though reforms under his reign typically meant further restrictions on autonomy for the subjugated species. The whispers suggested humans were the target this time. The Senate Hall itself was a testament to imperial grandeur. Vaulted ceilings that disappeared into darkness above, massive columns of polished stone that glimmered with embedded star crystals, and tiered seating arranged to ensure the Emperor's dais remained the focal point of all attention. Everything about the architecture reinforced a single message. You are beneath us. You exist at our pleasure. Quite the turnout today. Came a familiar voice from behind me. Dredge Yum, a fellow Volperi and one of the more tenacious journalists in the Galactic Press Corps, slid into the empty seat beside mine. Her ears twitched with excitement, a telltale sign she anticipated a story worth pursuing. Indeed, I replied, nodding toward the empty section reserved for the human delegation. Though our cousins from Earth appear to be running late. Dredge, follow my gaze. Or perhaps choosing not to attend at all. Have you heard the latest? The Emperor's new directive specifically targets human expansion. Something about them developing technology too rapidly, establishing colonies without proper oversight. Before I could respond, a hush fell over the chamber. The human's absence was now obvious to everyone, and the murmurs grew louder. Savages, hissed Ambassador Click of the Morden Confederation, their exoskeleton clicking as they leaned toward us. Humans have never truly assimilated into the Dominion's order. They question everything, demand exceptions to our oldest traditions. It was only a matter of time before the Emperor addressed their rebellious tendencies. Or perhaps, I replied carefully, they simply bring new perspectives to ancient problems. Flick's compound eyes flashed with disapproval. New perspectives lead to disorder, Ambassador Quill. The Dominion has maintained peace precisely by limiting such innovations. Our conversation ended abruptly as the imperial fanfare echoed through the hall. A procession of royal guards in gleaming armor entered first, their synchronized movements precise after centuries of refined tradition. Behind them, Emperor Cashin Vox strode forward, his crimson robes flowing behind him like a river of blood. His face, though aged by thousands of years of life extension treatments, remained imperious and cold. The Emperor's personal transport, a levitating platform ringed with protective energy fields, carried him to the central podium. No one in living memory had seen Emperor Vox walk on his own feet. It was beneath his dignity to touch the same ground as his subjects. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Dominion, the Emperor's voice boomed without need for amplification. Another display of imperial technology reserved exclusively for the ruling elite. For 10 millennia, our union has maintained order among the stars. Today, we must address a growing concern that threatens this harmony. I felt Dredge tense beside me, her datapad poised to record every word. The human species, while a relatively recent addition to our cosmic family, has demonstrated certain concerning tendencies. Emperor Vox's thin lips curled into what might have been a smile on another being. Their rapid technological advancement, unauthorized colonial expansion, and reluctance to submit to our established oversight mechanisms cannot continue unchecked. The Emperor gestured, and a holographic document materialized in the air before each representative. Directive 57B, he announced. Effective immediately, all human vessels will carry Dominion observers with override authority. Resource quotas for human colonies will be adjusted to appropriate levels. All technological research will require Imperial approval before implementation. Murmurs rippled through the hall, some of approval, many of concern, a few of outright fear. I scanned the document quickly, my stomach tightening at the implications. This wasn't regulation, it was strangulation. The humans will never accept. This, I whispered to Dredge. It essentially reduces them to a vassal species. Dredge's ears flattened against her head. Which is precisely the point, isn't it? They've grown too quickly, achieved too much. The old order feels threatened. Around us, the Senate divided into factions. The Moradins, Zolthrax, and other ancient allies of the Imperial throne nodded their approval. The neutral blocs, including my own people, exchanged concerned glances. Species that had previously faced Imperial adjustments sat in resigned silence. Their once proud civilizations now mere footnotes in the Dominion's history. One might question, ventured Ambassador Lyr of the Nebulons, their voice wavering slightly, why the human delegation is not present to offer their perspective on these measures. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. They were summoned, as is protocol. Their absence speaks to the very concerns this directive addresses, a disregard for established order. As if summoned by the words themselves, the massive doors at the far end of the chamber crashed open. The sound echoed like thunder through the hall, causing even the Emperor's guards to flinch and raise their weapons. In the doorway stood a lone figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the deep blue uniform of the human fleet with captain's insignia gleaming at the collar. But what seized everyone's attention wasn't the man himself, but what, or rather whom, he dragged behind him. Captain Jack Harper of Earth pulled behind him the unconscious form of Grand Admiral Amerius, the Emperor's right hand and military enforcer. The Admiral's ornate uniform was torn and stained with the metallic blue blood of his species. One of his arms hung at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. Harper dragged the Admiral's limp form across the polished floor, the sound of the body scraping against stone, the only noise in the shocked silence of the Senate Hall. Humanity, Harper announced, his voice calm, but carrying to every corner of the chamber, respectfully declines your directive, Emperor Vox. The chamber erupted into chaos. Guards rushed forward, weapons drawn. Representatives rose from their seats, some in outrage, others in terror. Emperor Vox's face contorted with a fury I had never before witnessed in all my years of service. "Seize him," the Emperor commanded, his voice cracking with rage. "Seize this barbarian immediately." The guards converged on Harper, but with remarkable calmness, the human captain reached into his pocket and activated a small device. Instantly, the guards' weapons went dead in their hands. The Emperor's floating platform wobbled dangerously before its stabilizers compensated. "I wouldn't recommend further aggression," Harper said, giving Admiral Amerius's unconscious form another pull closer to the central dais. "We've temporarily disabled the power systems in this chamber, and much more throughout Dominion space." "Impossible," the Emperor hissed. "Our systems are impenetrable." Harper offered a tight smile. "Evidently not." Dredge clutched my arm, her claws digging into my flesh. "Are you recording this?" she whispered frantically. "The network needs to see this." I nodded, though my attention remained fixed on the unfolding confrontation. In 10,000 years of recorded history, no one had ever dared such a direct challenge to imperial authority, certainly not while standing in the heart of the Senate itself. "Ambassador Quill," Dredge continued, her voice barely audible, "do you think the humans planned this all along? A direct confrontation? I don't know," I admitted. "But whatever happens next will reshape the galaxy." Harper stood at the base of the Emperor's platform now. Admiral Amerius's unconscious form sprawled at his feet. The human appeared utterly unconcerned by the hundreds of eyes fixed upon him, by the palpable tension that threatened to ignite the very air. "Emperor Vox." Harper addressed him directly, ignoring all protocols of deference and formal address. Approximately 6 hours ago, your fleet in the Outer Rim was preparing to implement the first phase of Directive 57B, the forcible boarding and subjugation of human vessels. We responded preemptively. You attacked Imperial forces? One of the Emperor's advisors gasped. No, hypercorrective. We neutralized them. Not a single Dominion soldier was killed. Your ships are intact, your crews unharmed, merely temporarily unable to operate their vessels or communications. The Emperor's knuckles whitened as he gripped the rails of his platform. You commit treason against the Dominion and expect mercy? Your species will be made an example of. With what army? Harper asked, his tone almost conversational. The technological virus we've deployed has affected 90% of your military capabilities across all sectors. Your remaining forces are isolated, cut off from central command. A ripple of shock passed through the Senate. If true, this meant the humans had achieved what no species had managed in 10 millennia. They had effectively neutralized the military might of the Galactic Dominion in a single stroke. Ow! The question escaped my lips before I could stop it, drawing Harper's attention briefly to our section. Precursor technology, he replied, loud enough for all to hear. The same ancient systems the Dominion has been clumsily reverse engineering for millennia. Turns out, if you actually understand the code instead of just copying it, you can find the back doors that have always been there. The Emperor's advisors huddled around him, speaking in urgent whispers. The implications were staggering. If the humans truly controlled the foundation technology upon which the Dominion had built its power, the balance had shifted irrevocably. Harper continued, addressing the entire Senate now. Humanity has no desire for war or conquest. We came to the stars in peace, joined your Dominion in good faith. But we will not accept subjugation. We will not surrender our autonomy or have our potential stunted to preserve an antiquated hierarchy. And so you resort to threats? The Emperor spat. To violence? Harper gestured to Admiral Amarius. The Admiral and his strike team attacked our delegation as we arrived for this session. They intended to arrest us before we could even speak. We defended ourselves, nothing more. I caught Dredge's eye, and we shared a moment of understanding. If Harper spoke the truth, then the Emperor had planned to silence the human delegation from start. Directive 57B was never meant for negotiation, only implementation. What are your demands? Asked Ambassador LYR of the Nebulons, their voice steadier now. Many representatives nodded in agreement with the question. Even those loyal to the Emperor recognized the reality of the situation. Not demands, Harper corrected. Proposals for a new covenant. One that recognizes the sovereign rights of all species, that ends the stratification of ancient and young races, that transforms the Dominion from an empire into a true federation of equals. The Emperor laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. You would dismantle 10,000 years of prosperity and order for your naive idealism. Your prosperity, Harper countered. Your order? Asked the Keldari how they fared under Imperial protection, reduced from a thriving civilization to near extinction because they developed faster-than-light communications independent of Imperial control. Asked the Jurians about prosperity when their resource quotas were adjusted to fund the Emperor's new palace wing. Murmurs of agreement rose from various sections of the chamber. Species that had suffered similar fates shifted uncomfortably, their representatives exchanging glances loaded with centuries of suppressed grievances. Harper took a step closer to the Emperor's platform. Anyone who wishes to test our resolve may step forward now. None did. With deliberate slowness, Harper reached out and deactivated the Emperor's hover platform. The energy fields surrounding it flickered and died. For the first time in perhaps thousands of years, Emperor Cassian Vox found himself without his protective bubble, standing on the same floor as those he ruled. The symbolism was lost on no one. The Emperor stumbled slightly as the platform settled to the ground, his legs unused to supporting his own weight. His face twisted with humiliation as he fought to maintain his balance, his hand instinctively reaching out to steady himself on Harper's offered arm before recoiling as if burned. "We have 12 hours, Harper announced, backing away from the Emperor. 12 hours for you to consider a new future for the galaxy. After that, we'll be forced to take more permanent measures regarding Dominion military capabilities. As chaos erupted again in the chamber, Harper turned and walked calmly toward the exit, leaving Admiral Amerius where he lay and Emperor Vox standing abandoned on the floor of his own Senate. Dredge tugged at my sleeve. "We need to speak with him. Now." Without waiting for my agreement, she pulled me from my seat and toward one of the side exits, clearly intending to intercept the human captain before he left the building entirely. We caught up with Harper in one of the antechambers, where he stood conferring quietly with several other humans who must have been waiting outside the main hall. They fell silent as we approached, regarding us with cautious expressions. "Captain Harper," Dredge began, her journalist's instincts overriding any sense of diplomatic protocol. "Dredge Yum, Galactic News Network. The story you've just created will reshape history. Would you grant us an interview to explain humanity's position more fully?" Harper studied us for a moment, his gaze lingering on my ambassador's insignia. "You're Volperi," he noted. "Your species has maintained neutrality throughout most Dominion conflicts. We prefer to evaluate situations on their merits rather than through the lens of ancient allegiances," I replied carefully. A ghost of a smile crossed Harper's face. "A diplomatic answer, Ambassador?" "Quill," I supplied. "And yes, the Volperi remain officially neutral in this confrontation as well. However," I added, lowering my voice, "many of us have long questioned the wisdom of the system that stifles innovation and diversity in the name of stability." Harper exchanged glances with his colleagues before nodding. "Very well, but not here. The Emperor's loyalists will be regrouping quickly." He led us through a series of corridors to a secure meeting room typically reserved for minor diplomatic functions. Once inside, the humans activated several devices that swept the room for surveillance before they relaxed visibly. "Now we can speak freely," Harper said, gesturing for us to sit. "What would you like to know?" Dredge immediately began recording, her ears perked forward with excitement. "How did humans discover the vulnerability in Dominion systems? And why act now?" "Discovery was partly luck, partly diligence," Harper replied. "An archaeological expedition on a border world uncovered intact precursor data cores, the original technology that the Dominion has been copying for millennia without fully understanding. Our scientists realized that the emperors of old didn't create the technology they claimed credit for. They merely appropriated it and restricted access to maintain power. And the timing? I prompted. We received intelligence about Directive 57B 3 weeks ago," one of Harper's colleagues explained. A woman with sharp features and calculating eyes. She introduced herself as Dr. Eleanor Ortiz, strategic advisor to the human delegation. It wasn't just about resource restrictions. It was a prelude to full military action against human colonies. They feared what we might become. With good reason, apparently, Dredge observed, earning a chuckle from Harper. "We've been careful," he said. "We've developed our understanding of precursor code in isolation, ensuring the Dominion remained unaware. We created a virus that can interface with any system built on precursor architecture, which includes virtually all Dominion military and communication technology. But you didn't destroy them," I noted. "Only disabled them temporarily." Harper nodded. "We don't want war or dominance. We want reform." Meanwhile, in his private chambers adjacent to the Senate Hall, Emperor Vox raged at his advisors. The opulence surrounding him, priceless artifact from 1,000 worlds, furniture crafted from materials so rare entire species had been worked to extinction to harvest them, seemed to mock his current vulnerability. "How is this possible?" he demanded of the medical team attending to Admiral Amerius, who had regained consciousness but remained weak. "How could humans develop such capability without our knowledge?" "They've been systematically deceiving us, Your Eminence," Amerius replied, wincing as a medic reset his broken arm. "Their official research programs were mere fronts. They must have been working on this technology in secret for decades. An empire that has stood for 10,000 years, brought to its knees by upstarts who barely learned to leave their own planet 3 centuries ago. The Emperor's voice trembled with rage and, though he would never admit it, fear. One of his senior advisors stepped forward hesitantly. "Your Eminence, we've received reports from across Dominion space. The human claims appear to be accurate. Our fleets are immobilized, our communication networks compromised. Even the defense systems of this very building are operating on limited auxiliary power that the humans have permitted us to retain. And what of our secret contingencies? The isolated systems kept precisely for such emergencies? Also affected, Your Eminence. The human virus seems capable of jumping even air-gap networks through some mechanism we don't yet understand." The Emperor sank into his throne, the weight of the situation finally penetrating his fury. "They have us at their mercy," he muttered, the words bitter on his tongue. "Perhaps not completely," Amarius suggested, sitting up despite the medic's protests. "The humans could have destroyed us outright if that was their intention. Instead, they're demanding negotiation. That suggests limits to either their capabilities or their resolve." "You recommend capitulation?" the Emperor asked incredulously. "Tactical flexibility," Amarius corrected. "We engage in their negotiation while seeking vulnerabilities in their position. No technological advantage is absolute. Given time, our scientists may find countermeasures." The Emperor considered this, his ancient eyes calculating. "Very well. Arrange a meeting with their representatives. But," he added, his voice hardening, "ensure our most loyal Senate factions understand this is merely a temporary accommodation." Back in the meeting room, Harper and Dr. Ortiz outlined what they called the Galactic Concordat, a comprehensive restructuring of Dominion governance. The document proposed equality among all species, an end to resource exploitation, and the establishment of a true galactic council with real governing power, reducing the Emperor to a largely ceremonial role. "You're not just clipping his wings," I observed as I reviewed the proposal. "You're dismantling the cage." "The cage has outlived its purpose," Dr. Ortiz replied. "The Dominion began as a means of uniting species under common laws and protection. Over millennia, it devolved into a hierarchical empire that exists primarily to sustain itself and enrich its elite." Dredge, who had been uncharacteristically quiet as she digested the implications, finally spoke. "And if the Emperor refuses these terms?" Harper's expression turned grim. "Then we execute a more permanent version of our virus, one that doesn't just temporarily disable Dominion systems, but locks them indefinitely. Without central control, the outer regions would quickly break away. Civil war would likely follow as oppressed species seize the opportunity for independence. You would risk galactic chaos?" I couldn't keep the alarm from my voice. "We would prefer not to," Harper assured me. "That's why we're offering a peaceful transition, one that preserves the useful structures of the Dominion while reforming its worst aspects. A revolution without destruction," Dredge mused, her journalist's mind already framing the narrative. "But make no mistake, Ambassador Quill," she added, turning to me, "what we've witnessed today is still a coup. Bloodless perhaps, but a fundamental transfer of power nonetheless." I couldn't disagree. In dragging Admiral Amarius across the Senate floor, in forcing Emperor Vox to stand on his own feet before his subjects, Captain Harper had already shattered millennia of carefully constructed mystique. The Emperor's power had always rested as much on perception as on military might. Both were now compromised beyond repair. As the 12-hour deadline approached, the Senate reconvened in an atmosphere of unprecedented tension. Representatives from all corners of the galaxy had spent the intervening time in frantic communication with their homeworlds, assessing the situation and determining their positions. Emperor Vox arrived without his usual ceremonial entrance, walking into the chamber on foot, a concession to reality rather than choice. His face was a mask of dignified neutrality, betraying nothing of the humiliation he must have felt. Captain Harper and the human delegation occupied their usual section, their posture relaxed but alert. "Esteemed representatives," the Emperor began, his voice carefully modulated to project strength despite the circumstances. "We face an unprecedented situation. After careful consideration, I have decided to entertain the proposals put forward by our human colleagues in the interest of galactic stability. The chamber filled with murmurs. Even those who had received private communications from Imperial loyalists were surprised by the Emperor's apparent capitulation. However, Vox continued, several aspects of the proposed Concordat require modification to ensure a smooth transition and prevent economic disruption across Dominion space. What followed was a masterclass in Imperial politics. Without explicitly rejecting any part of the human proposal, the Emperor introduced qualification after qualification, exception after exception, each designed to preserve some aspect of his power or the privileges of his closest allies. I watched Harper's expression darken as the Emperor spoke. The human delegation conferred quietly among themselves, their body language betraying growing frustration. When the Emperor finished, Harper rose to speak. "These are not suggestions open to Imperial revision," he stated flatly. "The Concordat represents the minimum acceptable reforms. Each exception you propose undermines its fundamental purpose. Surely there is room for compromise," the Emperor countered smoothly. "After all, you claim to seek peace, not conquest." "Compromise has been the tool of Imperial control for 10 millennia, Harper replied. "Each concession granted to subjugated species came with hidden costs that ultimately strengthened the throne. That ends today." The debate continued for hours, representatives from various factions adding their voices to the increasingly heated exchange. The ancient allies of the throne supported the Emperor's modifications, while species that had suffered under Imperial rule rallied behind the human position. As the deadline neared its final hour, Dr. Ortiz approached the central podium, datapad in hand. "Perhaps a demonstration will clarify the situation," she announced. She activated the device, and the chamber's lights flickered momentarily. "I've just executed a localized version of our virus on 3 systems," she explained calmly. "The Imperial Treasury network has been locked. All transactions are now frozen. The noble house's private communication channels have been severed, and the Royal Fleet's remaining functional vessels have lost life support capabilities. Temporarily," she emphasized. "All can be reversed with a command, or made permanent with equal ease." The Emperor's face drained of color. "This is extortion," he hissed. "This is revolution," Dr. Ortiz corrected. "One with remarkably little bloodshed, considering the alternatives history offers us." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had just demonstrated control over systems that many had believed untouchable, even given their earlier claims. It was Ambassador LYR who broke the silence. "I move that we put the original Concordat to a vote," they announced, their normally hesitant voice firm with conviction, without Imperial modifications. Other representatives quickly seconded the motion, including, to my surprise, myself. I felt Dredge's eyes on me as I raised my hand in support, but I had made my decision. The Volperi had maintained neutrality for too long, while witnessing the slow strangulation of innovation and freedom across the galaxy. The vote that followed was unlike any in Senate history. Traditionally, votes were weighted according to a species' longevity in the Dominion, with the oldest races holding disproportionate influence. But today, with Imperial systems compromised, each representative's vote registered equally on the makeshift counting system the humans had established. The result was clear. An overwhelming majority favored the Concordat in its original form. Even some traditional Imperial allies, recognizing the shifting tide of power, voted in favor. Emperor Vox stood rigid as the results were announced, his ancient face betraying nothing. When invited to speak, he stepped to the podium with the same imperial bearing he had always displayed. "For 10,000 years," he began, "I have guided the Dominion through cosmic threats, interspecies conflicts, and the natural chaos of a growing galactic community. I have preserved order while younger races, in their impatience, sought rapid change without understanding its consequences." He paused, scanning the chamber with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. "Today, you choose a new path. I accept this decision, not because I agree with it, but because the alternative would bring suffering to countless beings across our realm. The Dominion will adapt, as it always has. With those words, Emperor Cashin Vox, ruler of 1,000 stars for longer than most species have been spacefaring, signed the document that reduced him to a figurehead. Captain Harper approached the podium next, standing alongside the Emperor in a visual representation of the power transition taking place. "We did not come here seeking to conquer," Harper addressed the Senate. "Humanity has seen enough of empires in our own brief history to recognize their fundamental flaws. We came seeking a true partnership among the stars, one where innovation is celebrated, not feared, where diversity of thought is recognized as strength, not weakness, where ancient wisdom and new perspectives work in harmony." He gestured to the document now bearing both his and the Emperor's signatures. The Concordat is not perfect. No single document could address the complex needs of so many diverse species, but it establishes principles that will guide us toward a more just and dynamic future. One where no single species, including humans, can dominate others through force or manipulation. As the formal session concluded, the Senate erupted into a mixture of celebration and intense discussion. Some representatives embraced across species lines, while others huddled in corners, already strategizing how to position themselves in the new order. Dredge found me amidst the chaos, her eyes bright with excitement. "This is the greatest story of our lifetime, Ambassador Quill." The day the Emperor was dragged across his own Senate floor, and a new galaxy was born from the ashes of the old order. I nodded, watching as Harper and his delegation moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations from some, cautious acknowledgement from others. But the story is far from over, Dredge. Signing a document is one thing. Implementing its provisions across 1,000 worlds will be quite another. "You don't think it will succeed?" she asked, ears twitching with curiosity. I replied carefully, that power rarely transitions smoothly, even with the best intentions on all sides. The Emperor has ruled for 10 millennia. His influence is woven into the very fabric of galactic society. And while humans may have the technological advantage today, other challenges will arise. "You're such a pessimist," Dredge chided, though her expression suggested she took my concerns seriously. "Realistic," I corrected, though I admit, I never thought I'd live to see the day when the Dominion structure was fundamentally challenged, let alone transformed. In the days that followed, the practical implications of the Concordat began to materialize. The human virus was gradually removed from Dominion systems as new safeguards and shared control mechanisms were established. The first meetings of the newly formed Galactic Council included representatives from species that had previously been marginalized, their voices given equal weight for the first time in millennia. Emperor Vox, true to his word, stepped back into a ceremonial role. Though bitterness occasionally showed through his carefully maintained facade, he performed his new duties with the same regal bearing he had always displayed. Those close to the imperial household whispered that he spent much of his time in seclusion, perhaps planning a return to power, perhaps simply mourning the end of an era. Captain Harper declined a permanent position on the council, stating that humanity should be represented by democratically elected officials, not military leaders who had seized a moment of opportunity. Dr. Ortiz, however, joined a special committee overseeing the transition of technological control, ensuring the precursor systems would never again be monopolized by any single faction. 1 month after the Senate confrontation, I found myself on an observation deck overlooking Orex Prime's capital, watching ships from 100 worlds navigate the busy sky lanes. Dredge joined me, her latest report on the Galactic Reformation having just been broadcast across the known universe. "Have you seen the latest from the Outer Rim?" she asked without preamble. 3 previously subjugated species have petitioned for full membership in the Council, citing the human precedent for self-determination. And distant systems that never fully integrated into the Dominion are suddenly eager to establish diplomatic relations, I added. The balance of power continues to shift. Dredge leaned against the railing, her gaze on the horizon where Oryx Prime's primary star was setting. Do you think he knew? Harper, I mean, when he dragged Admiral Amerius across the Senate floor, when he forced the Emperor to stand on equal ground, do you think he understood the symbolism he was creating? I consider the question carefully. I believe he did. Humans have always had an intuitive understanding of symbolic action. In that moment, he wasn't just neutralizing a military threat or making a political statement. He was shattering an illusion that had persisted for millennia, the illusion of imperial invulnerability. A new sun is rising, Dredge murmured, watching as the capital's lights began to illuminate against the darkening sky. A galaxy where the voices of the weak will finally be heard. Let us hope so, I replied, though I suspect the path forward will have its own challenges. Power, once redistributed, is not always wielded wisely by those unaccustomed to its weight. Dredge chuckled. Always the diplomat, Quill. Can't you simply enjoy the moment? I smiled in acknowledgement of her point. Perhaps she was right. For this evening at least, we could celebrate the dawn of something new. A galaxy transformed not through devastating war, but through a single act of defiance and the courage to imagine a different future. As we stood watching the stars emerge above Oryx Prime, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly the seemingly immutable can change. For 10,000 years, the Dominion had appeared eternal, unchangeable as the stars themselves. Yet it had taken only one human, dragging an admiral across a Senate floor, to reveal the fragility beneath the facade of imperial power. The galaxy had indeed watched in silence. But now, at last, it found its voice.